All right. Hello, everybody. I know I'm a few minutes early. I'm cheating a little bit, but we have a massive slate to go through. For those of you that don't know, this is DFS Army's tournament strategy show where we look at the previous slate, then we look at today's slate. Honestly, I didn't have time though. This slate is too massive to look at Monday, but Monday was a fantastic day for NFL. We had multiple five-figure wins. For NBA, we had multiple four-figure wins, three-figure wins. Everyone was doing well. Pre-lock show was on point. So awesome job there, but let's get into the weeds. We don't have time to play around today. Good to see you, everybody. McNasty, thanks for being in here. Agreed. Let's get that bag of green. It's going to be a good one. But like I said, guys, this is a massive slate. But I feel like there's some very obvious plays and obvious games to attack on this slate. So I think we have a pretty good idea of where we're going. And then there's some pivot areas, some low-owned guys that we're going to want some exposure to on this slate. One that I like a lot that I think most of you will probably end up hating. But let's start off with this Jazz game. Walker Kessler is questionable, so that's the biggest piece of news here. If Kessler misses this game, that should give guys like Collins, Kelly O an increase in minutes. We saw Kelly Olynyk have a massive game on Monday. That's part of why. Lauri Markkanen would definitely be in play a bit more as well. For me, the guy that I'm looking to target the most here is John Collins. I think this is a nice spot for him and a nice pace in a nice game. We like picking on the Pacers, and so I think John Collins is a guy that I definitely want exposure to tonight. Ideally, Kessler is out, and so I'll feel even better about that play. Outside of that, you can always take your shots on Markkanen. John Collins, Jordan Clarkson, he's projecting well from a fantasy points per dollar standpoint, so I think he's definitely viable from that perspective, but not someone that's going to be a core player, anything like that for me on this slate. So definitely a game I want exposure to, definitely a team I want exposure to. If Kessler's out, I'm really going to go overboard on it. But for now, just some pieces I like. Vic, Dixon, good to see you guys in here. For the Pacers tonight, I feel like they're going, like people aren't talking about them. They're not even projecting as well as I feel like some of them should. One guy in particular, Tyrese Halliburton. I know he didn't have the game we wanted on Monday because of the blowout, but I do expect, and you can see the sports books are projecting that this game should be a little bit closer than the one on Monday. I don't like to pick on the Jazz too much, but Tyrese Halliburton has just been too good this season for me to not get there. Miles Turner finally had a solid game on Monday as well. I'm fine getting some exposure to him, but there's bigs I like more on this slate. I'm not super interested in any of the other guys on this team. I think maybe Bruce Brown potentially, but not overly excited about it. Not going to try to force the issue personally. The game that everyone and their mom is going to want exposure to for good reason, 240 total, 2.5 point spread. I do think that this is the game to target, and I think everyone will, and I'm totally fine eating the chalk here. Carl, man, I was so bored yesterday. I think I realized I have a bit of a problem. I kept opening the DK app, and I wasn't playing DFS yesterday. There was absolutely no reason for me to open the app. It was weird. So yeah, might need some help there. Philip, what's good? Yeah, yesterday was so boring, but we're back at it today, and we have the opposite of boring. It's crazy. This Wizards team against the Hornets. First and foremost, we know we can play bigs against the Hornets. That's obvious, clear as day. Daniel Gafford is finally not on the injury report. On Monday, him and like two other guys were questionable, and then they both went off, and they were game time decisions. I was a little frustrated about that, but we don't have that issue today. Daniel Gafford is never a guy you love to trust because he can be a little handsy sometimes. Sometimes he can just go out there and do cardio, but I play bigs against the Hornets. He's priced extremely well. I do think he'll be pretty chalky, but I'm totally fine eating that chalk. Tyus Jones is a low usage guy. He's not someone that is going to go out there and I believe his usage rate is what, like 18%? Let me double check. Yeah, Tyus is 16%. So pretty low usage rate. So he's never someone that I like to have more than like 20 or 30% exposure to, but he's a little sneaky. He's probably one of those guys that aren't going to get as much exposure as like your Kyle Kuzmas and Jordan Pooles. Denny Avdia, same exact story, a little sneaky in a game environment I like a lot. So Tyus and Avdia are kind of like my sneaky plays on this team to get exposure to a high total game that should be close. Whereas Poole is kind of like your GPP guy that will probably disappoint, but fantastic matchup that I want to at least be around field weight exposure to him. And then Kyle Kuzma is more of your he can have high upside performances, but he's a bit more consistent. I expect him to reach value and just kind of do what you expect him to do in this spot, and I'm going to have a lot of him tonight. So if you can't tell, I love this game, and that's why I'm forcing exposure to it. I love my wife. I feel like if that's your username, I want to believe it more, but I don't know if I should. But anyway, good to have you, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. I love seeing us, and we usually have Brandon on the show. TK's on at times. TK's probably not going to be around as much. He has some life issues he's working on, and then Brandon will be on a bit more periodically, not as often as you've been seeing him. So disappointing for sure. I miss those guys, but they'll still be around on occasion. Dixon said Poole putting up 30 points tonight wouldn't shock me. I plan on being at least around field weight, and if he's under-owned, potential leverage play, but I think he'll be pretty popular tonight, so I'm not going too crazy on the Poole play, but fantastic spot for him. McNasty's talking about AD and Wood. We'll get there. We'll get there. Good to see you guys. Good to see you. Let's see. So yeah, I'm playing all of the starters. There's not really any of the guys coming off the bench that I'm trying to force exposure to, but I am playing all of their starters tonight. Small slate. So it's from a tournament standpoint, you can, I think it's definitely viable to not play Poole tonight just because he has been so streaky. If you want to get different, that's a clear and obvious way of doing it. If Gafford's popular, I think there's multiple ways he doesn't get there tonight. So on a 14-game slate, you can definitely fade the chalkiest game on the slate. I'm not, but that's an easy way of getting different. Let's see. For the Hornets, Terry Rozier, he's not playing tonight, and LaMelo freaking went off on Monday, and he has an even softer matchup against the Wizards tonight at 8,900. He is the chalk of the slate, and honestly, I think he's the best play on the slate. I'm not trying to get cute and fade him here. You obviously can because he will be chalky, and we talked about it's a large slate, easy way of getting different. There's other guards in a good spot, but I'm playing ball tonight, and I will be significantly, well, if he's super chalk, I might not be able to, but I am going to be over the field on LaMelo. It's that obvious for me. Ways of getting different here. We also like to play bigs against the Wizards, so I do think Mark Williams can be in play. He's never my favorite guy to put into a lineup, but he's definitely viable here in this matchup. Brandon Miller looked awful on Monday. He did not look great. He barely did anything out there for the 36 minutes he played. But this is a softer matchup for him. He should be low owned. It's a pure tournament play, just attacking the highest game total on the slate that has a nice close spread. I do think guys like Miller, Hayward, and PJ Washington are in play here as kind of like those tournament GPP high upside kind of plays you want. Yeah. Don't tell the secrets, Mr. 5. We only talk about the sim on the pre-lock show. The sim model is what has helped me take down multiple tournaments in the past. It really helps me find those low-owned guys. And also it helps me feel better about guys like LaMelo when it's also liking them a lot. Vic said Hayes and Sasser too, Hawkins as well, Crowder. Yep. That's going to be a game we like a good bit on this slate too. Definitely a good spot. McNasty said fading ball. Yeah, I think you definitely can. It's totally a tournament play to do that. I prefer to fade Poole or Kuzma instead of Ball, just because Rozier is out, so it's an increase in usage for Ball, whereas the Wizards just have a soft matchup. But again, I'm never going to tell anyone not to do something that makes total sense from a tournament game theory standpoint. Moving on. Obviously, love these first two games. It's going to go downhill from here. For the Celtics, we have another decent spread, significantly lower than the first two games, or total. And then the spread's pretty close in this game. I feel like this is a game that I like a little bit more to watch than from a fantasy standpoint, but it's definitely worth taking some shots here. I don't love the matchup against the Celtics. Both the Celtics and the Sixers have been really good offenses this year, and solid and good defenses as well. So there's not one guy I feel like is in a fantastic spot. Porzingis is looking a little cheap, but going against Embiid, I'm not super excited about it. Drew, his usage has been garbage this season. Let me see. Let me find it. Yeah, 18% usage rate. Extremely low for him, but it makes sense that he's kind of taking the back seat to some of the other stars that are playing on this slate. Derek White is probable, so that makes me feel even a little bit less confident in that play, and so I'm just not excited about it. If I'm taking a shot on the Celtics tonight, it's with Tatum or Brown, and honestly, I doubt I'm getting there on this slate, but they're viable for sure. Agreed, Vic. Like definitely the game of the night to watch. This is a playoff game, literally. For the Sixers, if you all were watching on the pre-lock show on Monday, we had a 10% min on Embiid, Jokic, and Maxey was a leverage play that smashed. But on this slate, I'm not as excited about it. If I'm taking a shot, I'll be more interested in some of the cheaper pieces in like Maxey or Harris. But ultimately, I just think there's other game environments a bit more. If I get some exposure to these guys in the domination station, I'm okay with it. But ultimately, not super excited about it. But viable. For the Clippers, man, this team looked awful on Monday. Everyone was not clicking. Let's see, from an injury news standpoint, do we have anything interesting for the Clippers? So Terrence Mann is questionable. I'm convinced he just doesn't want to play for this team. Mason Plumlee's out. That should solidify the minutes a little bit for Zubac, but again, there's a lot of bigs I like a bit more on this slate. One being the obvious stud who everyone and their mom should be playing tonight. Holy crap, Dixon, you're right. How did I not even... Yeah. Drew Revenge. I mean, I feel like Drew Revenge would be against Milwaukee. I don't think he has anything against the Sixers unless I'm missing something. Vic said, can't roster Clippers till the salary comes down or one of them are out. I agree. These guys just aren't exciting. Again, if you want to take a shot, for me, it's always going to be of Leonard or George. Westbrook wasn't awful on Monday, but again, I just don't think this is a game I want to target or a team I want to target. I'm always fine with a little bit of exposure, 10% or less if the DS gives it to me, but I don't want more than 20% of any of those guys. The Nets, Cam Thomas, man, went off. We said it. We were like, you can play guards against Milwaukee. Just played the wrong guard in Dinwiddie. But one of the coaches at DFS Army Uppers, he was all over Cam Thomas. So you crushed if that went through for you. Lonnie's been all right too, but again, just not a team I want to pick on. I feel like everyone's priced appropriately. There could be a leverage play in here, but ultimately, I just don't foresee myself getting much of this team. Giroux was drafted by the Sixers. Andrew, we'll get to it. There is a stud. We'll get to it. Plus Man playing 2 now, so Bones is done. Yeah, the Clippers team is just gross, man. The Clippers just across the board, just not a team I'm trying to get to. The Nets, I think you could find some pieces, but no one's really popping for me as of right now, so I'm just kind of passing. Like I said, the first 2 games, those are the fun ones. Those are the ones that we're forcing exposure to. Outside of that, we're looking at GPP plays. For the Spurs going up against the Knicks, I don't like picking on the Knicks from an offensive standpoint. Keldon Johnson has been in fantastic form, so he's one of the few guys that are kind of on my radar. Zach Collins is fine. He's projecting well. Again, I don't love the matchup for him, so I am going to prioritize other center plays over Zach Collins, but I'm fine if he's in the mix. But for me, here's only Keldon Johnson and Zach Collins. I know I was early on the train with Victor Wembanyama. That was fine. We rode the train for a while. It was fun. And we'll probably get back there at some point, but this is not the spot for him, in my opinion, at this price tag. Sohan, same story. Trey Jones, same story. Mr. 5, I hear you. You want to play Victor in the Garden. It is probably going to be a special moment for him, but his minutes have been all over the place, and that not being consistent and him not and him going against a tough defense like the Knicks is just not my favorite spot. But I think you can definitely go for the narrative of first time he played in the Garden had an explosive game. That's fine, but not where I'm going. I think it's more Keldon Johnson and Zach Collins for this team for me, though. Still not excited about it. For the Knicks, Julius Randle's starting to look a little bit better. He's starting to look a little bit better. He's creeping up there, finally getting some 40-point fantasy performances, but we need more. The Spurs haven't been an awful defense this season, so not really a spot where I feel like we can really pick on them. But the guy that's really only viable here for me is Randle. It's weird, like even with RJ coming back into the fold, he wasn't awful. So if I'm taking a shot here, it's going to be on Randle and probably no one else. I'm not really interested in Brunson or Barrett here. Of course, you can play them as like tournament GPP plays, but they're not guys I'm trying to force in. Again, they're going to be like 20% or less guys, whereas Randle potentially could be a little bit higher for me depending on where his ownership falls. Okay, I'm not crazy here. You're seeing it too, McNasty. It's the price tag, matchup minutes is all trending up for him, and so it feels like it could finally be that explosive spot for him. So especially at home. So we'll see. Or he could just revert. The spread is worrisome. That 10-point spread is ugly. So that's also a big piece of why I'm not trying to force too much of exposure to that game. Probably one of the more boring games on the slate. We have the Miami Heat against the Memphis Grizzlies. Bam went off. He went off on Monday. We haven't seen that version of him in a long time. And thankfully he was pretty much 0% owned, so he didn't really hurt anybody. I do think this could be an interesting spot for Bam. Again, no Steven Adams here on the Grizzlies. $8,200 price tag. If he stays in that form he was in, this definitely could be an interesting spot. Guys like Jimmy, he's priced decently. I understand the play. If I get some exposure to him naturally, that's fine. But again, not going to force the issue there. Appreciate it, guys. Definitely do hit the like button, subscribe, help out the channel. Make sure we keep this show going. Not the spot for Victor in the Garden. Y'all tripping. Hey, man, Gabriel, if you want to do it, I always say take your shot. It's always fine to take your shot. I'm never going to tell you not to do it. It's just not for me. Just not for me. Dixon said, why did Brunson stink last game? Defense, bad shooting. I would have to look closer at it. I wasn't on Brunson, so for me, it's probably just not a great game environment, but I have to look closer at it. Kennard 4K hit a week ago. All right, man. I'm not really on Kennard right now, but that definitely could change. I'll look a little bit closer at it. Josh Richardson, man, he was awful on Monday. I wasn't high on him. I definitely had at least less than 15% or less than 20% or something like that. For me, he's a cheap value play that can get hot sometimes, but he has a 0.69 points per minute. That's freaking awful. You're not going to find me playing a guy like that over 20%. He projects well. He can definitely still end up in a winning lineup, but don't go crazy on Josh Richardson. You will have a bad night. We said it on the pre-lock show on Monday. I'll say it on this show live. If you have more than 30% Richardson, more than likely you're in for a bad time. But it's fine to have some exposure to him because he can do enough to get you there. Hero's been in really good form. Tournament play, it's fine. The only guy I'm planning on playing here is Bam. Spent way too much time on that game, on that team. For the Grizzlies, let's see. Injury news. What are we working with here? Okay. Contra's doubtful. Tillman's out. Jaw's been out for a while. You'll see these guys are projecting pretty well. 8,400 for Jaren Jackson Jr. For me, he's an option, but I like other guys around his price range a little bit more. You can even pay up for Kawhi Leonard, who's just $100 more. So I would even rather do that, but I do expect I'll have some exposure to JJJ tonight. Kennard only at 4K. You were just talking about him. Vic, he's kind of falls in that Josh Richardson, but slightly better category for me. He can slide into some of my lines, but I don't want more than 30% of a guy like Luke Kennard. Unless for some weird reason he ended up starting or something like that, which he shouldn't. Yeah, Kennard's in a good spot. He's in a good spot. Like, he's definitely viable. But again, like, it's just not a guy I want to go crazy on. I'm fine being over the field, which 30% probably will be, but I don't want more than that, or at least more than 30 to 40. All right, y'all are getting to me a little bit. Let's move on. Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, you'll see just because of the injuries this team has, their bigs in particular, Zaire and even, I don't like Biyombo too much, but even like Biyombo, JJJ, they're just more viable because they should see more minutes. And that's kind of why you're probably going to get exposure to guys like Jaren Jackson Jr., Aldama, guys like that on this slate. Yeah, exactly. He'll be a part of the 150 mix, just not a guy that going too crazy on. Like, sometimes there's these value plays where I'm like, hey, they're going to be a core play for me tonight. But if he's not starting, he's just kind of in the mix. So definitely viable. Good call out. Appreciate you, Dixon. Glad Cam Johnson's still out. I mean, actually, if he would have played, it would have made it pretty easy to just write off the Knicks, or the Nets, but it's fine. All right, moving on. For the Suns, let's see which one of them are not playing tonight, because there's always one or two. Bradley Beal is questionable. He might actually play tonight. We'll see. We'll see. He hasn't played all season, but he was practicing yesterday. And it's looking like it's trending towards he might finally start playing tonight. So definitely keep a close eye on that. Devin Booker has already been ruled out, so that makes it pretty obvious. I'm interested in taking shots on Beal here. I think if Beal actually plays tonight, I'm willing to be over the field on him. One thing that's helped me have some of my biggest wins, like some of my largest six-figure wins, we're usually taking shots on these guys who were out and playing them in their first game or so. Of course, if we hear that the coach is saying like, hey, we might put them on a minutes limit, that might change things for me a little bit. I might be more open to not playing Beal tonight, but Beal's on my radar as someone that I would consider as a leverage play, which ideally would be as low as me having like 10 to 15% of him tonight. So keeping a close eye on the ownership and then making sure he actually plays. Outside of that, no one's standing out for me. If Beal doesn't play, I do think you can play Kevin Durant. He's definitely viable in that spot. He's pricey, but viable. No other studs. Yeah, not wrong. No sample yet. We don't know what the usage or rotation is going to look like, but I've made money taking shots like this before, so I'm fine doing it. Let's see. For the Bulls, Andre Drummond finally came through for us a little bit on Monday. Again, another guy I'm fine having exposure to on this slate, but I'm not going to go over 20 to 30% on him. Just not a guy I trust a ton. His minutes are usually all over the place. Really, I don't foresee myself going above 20%. And then we have the trio, the good old trio. DeMar DeRozan was a clutch core play, I believe. That worked out. Outside of that, there's Levine and Vooch. There's other bigs I like on this slate, to be honest. I'm not planning on forcing exposure to any of these guys. I kind of think it's just going to be a gross game, so don't love it. Yeah, Vic, exactly. Levine still owes a lot of us money. For me, it was that game when he was questionable and he played. I'm still kind of pissed off about that, and then he crushed. But, it happens. It happens. For the Cavs, let's see here. Any injury news we're looking at? Yeah, Okoro's out. Probably the thing that matters most. Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill. These guys are projecting well. They're projecting pretty well. The game environment, decent total, close spread. So I like that. Donovan Mitchell's a fine play. I expect him to kind of show up in my lines a little bit naturally, but not a guy I'm going to force exposure to. Same story with Mobley. I think the only guy that I have a chance of being over the field on is Darius Garland here at 7,200. I just think that's a nice price tag for him. But again, I'm not overly passionate about this game as much as I am about the first two and some of the later games that we'll touch on. Some of them aren't that far. For the Thunder, Chet, he's been a core play for us for a while now. He's just too cheap for the upside he's been producing. To me, he's Victor Wembanyama week 1 and 2 when he was in the 7K range. He's just too cheap for the upside he has. So the matchup against the Cavs is tougher. is not my favorite matchup to have, especially with Jared Allen playing again. But I am comfortable being over the field on him. I don't think Chet will be a core play for me just because of the matchup, but I am comfortable being over the field on him. Let's see. Anyone else? SGA is always fine to mix in as like a tournament high upside play, but I don't love the price tag. Giddey, bleh. Jalen Williams, fine if he's in the mix. Lou Dort, he's been awful, extremely low usage rate. I'm not going there. So yeah, for me, it's really just Chet on this team and moving on. Yeah, Hawkins has been a little bit all over the place. Perfect timing to talk about the Pelicans. But he definitely showed us on Monday that he is not something to be played around with. So with the Pelicans, of course, Herb Jones is questionable. Zion is out. That's big. CJ is out. Jose Alvarado's been out. Trey Murphy's been out. Najee's been out. Matt Ryan has had some solid games. You can see that Larry Nance is starting to pop a little bit. Jordan Hawkins, man, finally having he was finally had a good game with CJ out and being in the starting lineup. He's had some strong performances throughout this season, but everyone was a little lower on him after his last dud. So I do feel pretty comfortable going back to Hawkins at 4,700. He's way too cheap. Being in the starting lineup here, definitely a viable play. Don't care how much ownership I have of him. Matt Ryan, a little bit less consistent, a lot less consistent than Hawkins, but definitely a viable play. He can be in your mix. I'm not overly concerned around how volatile he can be. I'm comfortable being slightly over the field on him. Larry Nance would be a smash play if he wasn't only center eligible. If he was power forward and center eligible, everywhere. But only being center eligible lowers my excitement of him. With Zion being out, I do like the spot. I plan on having exposure to Larry Nance, but where he falls from an ownership standpoint, we'll decide how high or if I'll be over the field or under the field on him. Let's see. If Herb Jones is out, I'm just going to load up on Matt Ryan and Hawkins. Ingram just has not been that guy this season, guys. He's been struggling. He was a leverage play for us on Monday with CJ out, but he still just couldn't exceed his price tag. So from a value standpoint, I do think I'm willing to go back here. Hopefully he's at lower ownership. He's someone that I'm keeping a close eye on as a potential leverage play. But the leverage play will only be if his ownership's lower than it should be, in my opinion. I do want to be around 20 to 30% exposure on Brandon Ingram, willing to go higher if need be. Joe Val has, just hasn't really been that guy. I do like him a good bit with Zion out. I'll like him more if Herb Jones ends up missing this game. So I'm keeping a close eye on that. Giddey's going to go dumb. All right, man. Hopefully you crush with him. Dixon said, yeah, double props, man. Keep crushing them. Vic said, when he plays with SGA, it's hard to get anything from OKC at salary. Chet is the lotto ticket. I agree. He's the only play that I'm really excited about from that game. Ryan Smash, I think he definitely has a good chance to. Like I said, I like him a bit more if Jones misses this game, but he's on my radar. I like this team tonight. Dixon, yeah, the former Falcons quarterback. Poor guy. Imagine him getting that his entire life. That would have to suck. Yep, Hawkins is in play for sure. Agreed. Yeah, I think Ingram's just a little bit banged up. We've seen this happen, though, in the NBA where guys get a little bit banged up. They have some rough games, and then eventually it just all starts to click. So I'm willing to keep going back to him here. Not overly concerned about it, but doubt he'll be a core play. Timberwolves, man, they're just hard for me to take a shot on when they're healthy. Those of you who were watching the pre-lock show, though, on Monday, I was talking about how I had the itch. I had the itch to play Anthony Edwards. That game did go into overtime, I believe, and so that probably had a good bit to do with why he was able to exceed value as much as he did. But, dang, we would have taken the shot. That would have been nice. I don't think this is the spot to do it. With Anthony Edwards, if you want to, I mean, I'm not going to tell you not to, just not my favorite spot. Game spread does concern me a little bit, so I don't want to pay up for these guys, where I'm more so interested in paying up on the Pelicans side, hoping this game stays close. Of course, if that happens, then you can take a shot on some of these more expensive guys, but I tend to not play that way. And I like playing some of the cheaper guys from the Pelicans who will probably still see run if this game does blow out. But on the Timberwolves side of things, I'm just not as excited about their trio of Edwards, Cat, and Gobert. Of course, Conley's a solid lineup filler. Again, never a guy you want to get overly excited about, but his price tag keeps him in play. And then we saw Naz Reid have a really strong start, and he kind of fizzled out towards the end, but he definitely still exceeded value. So he was a good play. And I am going to feel very similarly about Naz Reid on this slate too. Fine if he shows up in my lines, but I probably don't want more than 40% of him on this slate. Okay. Anyone else here? I don't think so. We can move on. All right. 5 more games left. We are pushing through this. And we have the Pistons against the Bucks. Again, we talked about it over and over and over again. The Bucks just aren't the same defensively. Let's see from an injury news standpoint what we're looking at for the Pistons. Jalen Duren, questionable. Jaden Ivey, out. Alec Burks, out. Joe Harris, out. Bogdanovich has been out. That is why you're going to get exposure to the Pistons tonight. Someone that I am fairly certain will end up being a leverage play for me once again will be Cade Cunningham. Again, we can play guards against this Bucks team, and he's going to be the lesser owned of Hayes and Sasser. With that being said, I'm playing Hayes and Sasser. I'm playing a crap ton. I'll probably be significantly over the field on them. Like we've been saying, soft matchup. I like it here. It's going to be good. Cunningham, I like. Asar Thompson, he's fine. He's in the mix. We've seen him have. He did well on Monday. He can definitely be explosive. Or maybe he wasn't great on Monday. I don't really remember. But he's fine to be in the mix, but not my favorite play. If Duran's out, I'm totally fine going back to Bagley here. He won't be a core play for me this time, but I would still be comfortable being over the field on him. I know he subbed last time, and so no one's going to play him this time. So here we go. But favorite plays are definitely Hayes and Sasser. They're the best DFS plays, and then Cade Cunningham is kind of like a GPP play for me. The Bucks, large spread. We saw this on Monday where no one wanted to play Embiid. But I'm comfortable playing Yannis and Damian Lillard here. I think the matchup against the Pistons is one that I'm totally fine attacking with. I don't know if I want to play them together. I don't think I do. No, I'm not doing that. If it happens naturally, I'm not going to make a rule against it, but I don't love that. But I want exposure to these guys tonight. These are 2 guys I'm going to make sure are showing up in my lineups. Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis, Jay Crowder. They're all guys that are going to pop and show up in your optimizers tonight, probably no matter what site you use. Jay Crowder at 3,900 just makes a lot of sense. Let me see. Jay Crowder played 30 minutes on Monday. Of course, he can be a cardio bro. He's not always out there playing the most minutes, but just seeing him actually reach 30 minutes speaks to his upside. I think 3,900 is just a little bit too cheap for the upside he can have. You're not expecting like 40, 50 points from Crowder. Just remember that you're kind of expecting something between like 28, maybe 30 if you're lucky. That's kind of like the upside you're chasing with him. So just level set your expectations there. But I like this spot for him. Even if he hits 23, he'll still get us at 6x value. So he's fine. He's in play. Yeah, Mr. 5. I think you can definitely Stewart over Bags is definitely totally viable way of going too. I'll definitely follow y'all's lead on that. You were on that on Monday. I'll definitely do that a little bit, but I'm totally fine taking some shots on Bags too. Zolo, good point. Hayes chalk does usually burn us, but I'm still gonna do it. Not gonna lie. Against this Bucks team, I'm just gonna do it. Yeah, exactly. Crowder, 3-and-D player. If that shot starts falling, can definitely get there for us. But you got to be careful with him because he can't go out there and do a lot of nothing. So not a guy that's going to be a core play for me, but I do expect to probably have less than 60%. I don't really want to go higher than 60. I don't want to make him a core play or anything like that, but I'm fine having a good bit. All right. Moving on. Lakers against the Rockets. This is the part y'all are going to hate. Anthony Davis is questionable. He was in and out of the last game, which is why people call him street clothes for a reason. He is always in and out of lineups. But with that being said, if he plays tonight, I am going to be over the field. He will be a leverage play for me tonight. And that's if we get the news. If we don't get the news by lock, I'm fine just kind of fading it. But he's going to be a leverage play for me tonight if he is playing. Obviously, if Davis doesn't play, that impacts everyone else. That makes James, Russell, Reeves have an increase in usage. And then, of course, we saw Wood have a strong performance kind of replacing Anthony Davis here. So I like the spot for the Lakers tonight. We saw Austin Reeves have a strong performance on Monday, but I think a lot of that was because D'Angelo Russell was also injured in that last game, so has something to do there. But really, we just got to keep a close eye on the news here. If Anthony Davis sits, we're going to need to play some Lakers tonight against this Rockets team we can pick on. So I plan on having significant exposure here. If Davis plays, I'm going to be over the field on him. If he doesn't play, then I'll have exposure to the rest of the team. The important thing to note here, though, is Anthony Davis is a risk. When you are going over the field on a guy who gets hurt a lot and was hurt in the last game, risk. I think more likely than not, he plays and gives it a good shot and then gets hurt halfway through the game and sucks. Like, honestly, I think that's what is the likeliest scenario to happen, but that's what everyone thinks. And so that's why he's going to be a leverage play for me tonight in a good spot. I make plays like this over and over again. The sim model also likes him a good bit. Vic said Reeves, and that's it for me. Would maybe if AD's out. I get it. I think Reeves might be a little bit too popular tonight. We don't have ownership yet, but I'm keeping a close eye on it. Just because he had that strong game on Monday. I think a lot of people don't know that D'Lo got hurt a little bit there. Yeah, LeBron James and Dylan Brooks rematch. We have to talk about it. Dylan Brooks was talking mad shit already. And is this a nationally televised game? Okay, it's not. If it was, it would increase my interest in LeBron a little bit more. But for me, it's really only if AD sits. Yeah, exactly, man. Yeah, Mr. Five. I think LeBron's fine. He's priced well. He's just not a guy I typically like to target unless it's a national televised game, which sounds so fishy, but it's true. Yeah, exactly. Brooks said he's locking down Braun. Whatever, man. I hate Brooks so much. You shouldn't hate people. That's what everyone tells you, but I hate Brooks so much. I actually played Brooks a little bit, and I do think Brooks is still a viable tournament play. Yeah, that's a bias of mine. That I just can't play him anymore. But if he shows up a little bit naturally, I'm not going to X him out of my player pool because that's really just stupid, but I'm not going to force him into my lineups. He's just too inconsistent. Outside of that, Şengün, he's priced well, but not a guy I'm trying to force exposure to on this slate because there's other bigs I like Anthony Davis on the other side. But if he shows up a little bit naturally, I think it makes a ton of sense against this Lakers team. Guys that I'm actually excited to play on the Rockets, though, are Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green. They've been in really good form, and this is a good matchup for them against the Lakers. Or decent matchup against the Lakers. Lakers have improved a lot defensively this year, so still not a team I want to go crazy with, but if FVV and Jalen Green are low owned, like below 10%, I want to be over the field on them. If they're a bit chalkier on this slate, I think it's safe to fade, but I don't think they'll be super chalky, so we'll see. So for me, it's really just Şengün, FVV, Jalen Green. Jabari Smith sucked on Monday. Not a guy I'm trying to force exposure to today, but again, if he shows up a little bit naturally in my 150, it's fine. I'm not going to X him out, but I don't want more than 20%. Really 10. Exactly, Vic. Exactly. That's the thing you have to keep remembering on these large 14-game slates. Like going game by game, I keep saying I'm not excited about this guy. I'm not excited about this guy. But a lot of that is because of how much I want exposure to these first two games on the slate and how much I like some of the Thunder guys, some of the Pelicans, this Bucks Pistons game. Like, I have games I want to be significantly over the field on, and so that's why a lot of these guys I'm just like, they're fine, but I'm not excited about them. And we saw on Monday, you can always take shots on these low-owned guys, and that's totally fine. I will too, but the vast majority of what I do will be around those games we touched on. Let's see. For the Raptors, they are pretty healthy outside of Achua, who's been questionable for weeks now. So keep an eye on that. I think Jakob Poeltl, we can play bigs against the Mavericks. Jakob Poeltl and Pascal Siakam are definitely on my radar. Siakam's price is going lower and lower and lower because he's performing worse and worse and worse. But he's definitely on my radar as a potential leverage play tonight. Scotty Barnes has been in fantastic form. I'm hoping this is finally a game I don't have to play him in against the Mavs that play at a slow pace. So I won't be going there a lot unless I get a little bit, but I definitely won't be above 10% on him. And hopefully that's fine. It's burned me a lot already this season, but I don't plan on going there. Schroeder, I like other point guards more, but if he shows up a little bit naturally, that's fine. I think Jakob Poeltl and Siakam are the only two guys that I have a chance of being over the field on, but I still don't love it that much, to be honest. Let's see. We have people talking. What are people saying? No one can stop Braun when he's running the lane. Yeah, Brooks is a clown. You just got to know that. Mr. Five said, I missed the old games where you foul the people and not get ejected. You know, a lot of the guys in the NBA right now, they need that. They actually need it. Zach said, if I can find the money to get there anyways. We're not there yet, but if blowout Sasser plays more, just me predicting. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Mavs, I'm not interested in them. You can always take your GPP shots on Doncic, but I am not a big fan. I just like other guys that I'm paying up for a bit more. Once again, typical story of a guy who MMEs. If I get a little bit of exposure naturally, I'm fine with it, but not going to have more than like 10-15% of him tonight. Lively is only fine if Kleba doesn't play, but again, not trying to get there either. All right. Next up, we have the Warriors. Honestly, I don't like these guys tonight. It's just that simple for me. You can always take your flyers on Curry. I usually do that, especially when he's low owned. I don't like this spot for the Warriors tonight, though. You can always take your GPP flyer on Klay Thompson, but he really hasn't been in great form here lately. Draymond is questionable, so that moves things a little bit. I mean, if Draymond's out, I guess I like guys like Thompson, Wiggins, Curry a little bit more, but I don't foresee myself getting a lot of the Warriors tonight. With that being said, though, I love Jokic. Best pay-up option on the board. Jokic over Embiid, and I don't have to think about it too much. It's just, we can play bigs against this Warriors team, and they do well. Jokic is one of a kind of big. Fantastic spot. I have nothing to say besides I want as much as I can possibly get. And he's cheaper than Luka. It's just great matchup, great price. I'm sold. That easy. It would be nice if he came in at lower ownership, but I don't really expect that, to be honest. And outside of that, I do like Gordon and MPJ here with Murray out. They're still priced appropriately where they can definitely have some high upside performances, especially if this game stays close. I plan on having a little bit of exposure to both Aaron Gordon and MPJ, with one of the two being a leverage play, potentially, but it just depends on ownership. Outside of that, I don't love a lot of these guys. Looks like Peyton Watson might be popping a little bit. I need to look a little bit closer at that before I kind of solidify I want to actually play him. Okay, Draymond is out. Awesome. I guess that helps the matchup for Gordon a little bit and MPJ. Just defensively, the Warriors aren't going to be as good with Draymond out. So I feel a little bit better about taking those shots on Gordon and MPJ. I don't think it means I'm going to start playing Warriors on this slate, though. Let's see. Yeah, Portland Trailblazers against the Kings. We know the Trailblazers are out Scoot right now. That's really the only thing. Anthony Simons has been out for a while. The main guy that I'm forcing exposure to tonight is DeAndre Ayton. Like I said, I like some of these bigs tonight, and Ayton's one of my favorite on the slate against this Kings team. 7K is too cheap for him, and he's been in good form, surprisingly. So I really like the spot for him. And yeah, I plan on being over the field wherever his ownership is. Malcolm Brogdon's priced at 8,200, which is fair for how well he's been playing. I think I'll naturally get decent exposure to him tonight, so I don't think I'll have to force the issue, but I'm keeping a close eye on him. He's someone I don't want to forget about. Shaden Sharp, he's fine if he fits into some of my lines naturally, but not a guy I want to force tonight. But I plan on probably being around 20-30% around field weight. Grant, not overly excited about him. Not going to force it as much. I like some other power forwards more, but he's in the mix. He's viable. Let's see. Anyone else? Not really. Not for me. Ayton's really the guy I'm forcing exposure to here. Gonna let the DS work its magic on the other guys. For the Kings, Sabonis is getting cheaper, slowly but surely. At 10K, I do think Sabonis is viable, but I would much rather play Anthony Davis. So I'm not getting to Sabonis tonight as long as Anthony Davis plays. If Anthony Davis doesn't play, I'm interested in sprinkling like 5% exposure on Sabonis and forcing a little bit of him. But again, I prefer AD tonight. Outside of that, you can take your shots on guys like Monk and Murray and crew. Hoyter had a strong game last time out. Like I said, the Kings have been struggling from an offensive standpoint, and so they needed someone to step up. It wouldn't shock me if Hoyter ends up kind of taking that role of being more of an offensive force for them. But I want to look a little bit closer at that game, and we can look at it on the pre-lock show to see if we're actually going to boost him a little bit. But I'm on the fence for now. But ultimately, don't love it. Don't love the Kings tonight. So just a quick recap. Like Ayton a lot. Like the Nuggets a lot. Like some of the Raptors. AD for the Lakers. The Pistons. Bucks. I like this game even though the spread is wide. Like the Pelicans. Cheapies. And Ingram. Like Chet. Beal. Worth taking a shot on. And then I like the first two games a lot. Slate in a nutshell. All right, y'all. We will be back for the pre-lock show. I think B-Dubs will be on the show as well. So we'll talk through what we're doing actually on the Domination Station. We'll talk through leverage plays. Feel free to use the promo code BOB for a 10% discount if you want it. McNasty, I hear you. AD scares me too. But I've had success playing these guys who people are scared to play, so I just always do it. So good luck, y'all. I'll see you later. Peace out.